Hey, what's up? Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Nike Ja 1, and I have heard more about these shoes than just about any other. The hype around these is just crazy, and I think there are some things that really complement Ja's game with these shoes. I think some other things you really got to watch out for before you buy them. So let's get into all of them. Here we go. Now the Ja 1 is a relatively simplistic silhouette of a shoe. It really reminds me of the profile of some Nike tennis shoes with some real exceptions. Now if you look at the uppers, it is mainly just jersey material as well as some synthetic leather overlays right here in the midfoot. I do like that because this does increase pivoting power here with these overlays. You can actually see where my big toe joint was actually bulging this one out right here. But what I noticed is the paneling on here isn't the most supportive. These Nike logos, yeah, they are sewn in. This back outrigger heel counter here is pretty loose. It doesn't integrate with the shoe. So you're not getting a ton of support from that, but it does allow a lot of degrees of freedom, as does the pretty low ankle collar as well. But with how fat and bulky the tongue is, with the relatively small diameter of the ankle collar, you really don't get a lot of slippage from these. Even though they are a super low shoe, your foot stays locked in really well. I noticed with these, even without having a runner's knot or a back eyelet, I had zero heel slippage issues. I stayed in these pretty good, and I actually went up a half size in these, which I'll talk about why in a minute. But what for sure is the best asset of the uppers of the Ja 1 is their breathability. On the breathability test with the heat gun, only got 90 degrees of warming. They cooled back down 33.1 degrees. So this material is very, very breathable. So on a really hot, humid summer day, these are still gonna breathe exceptionally well. And it also shows you sometimes these simple materials in the right configuration breathe better than some of the more premium materials you can get on some more of the flagship line shoes. And on the upper durability test, the Dremel 10-second Tire Grit sandpaper, and the Dremel does start to bite right through the top layer, that synthetic leather upper. However, it does not get into the mesh netting underneath of it. So I think as long as you're on a super gritty outdoor court, I think just sliding these will still be okay. Just get ready for that leather to start looking pretty scuffed up pretty quick. And so for containment on the universal rating system, I'm gonna give them a 3.5 out of 5. These shoes aren't really meant for crazy containment. Yeah, you're not gonna slip out of them, which is nice. However, they're more meant to kind of catch you on the extreme ends of your ranges of motion. And with the engineering of the midsole and the shape of the heel, there are some things you're gonna have to watch out for, which we'll get into when we talk about the fit and playability. But getting into the midsole teardown, this is what really confused me because I did the jump height and the bounce test before I cut the entire midsole open, so I wasn't positive of what was underneath of them when I was doing those tests. Because the results I got in those tests, which you'll see in a second, really kind of made me think there was something else going on in the midsole. However, when you look at it, it's a pretty plain midsole. It's very flat. The arch is a little bit higher than the rear foot, but it does just look like just one straight slab of Phylon with that really skinny rectangular zoom air unit in the forefoot. Do get a pretty stiff shank, which is nice. Like I said, the arch is a little bit molded, but largely this shoe is meant to feel like a very flat to the ground shoe, especially with the full length tread pattern. But the funny thing is, when I tested it out on the jump height test, got 23.5 centimeters, one of the best shoes I have tested, and then backed it up on the bounce height test, where I got 38 centimeters of bounce height in the heel and 43 centimeters of bounce height in the forefoot. I think that ball just got that zoom unit perfectly, which tells me if they are just using straight Phylon in this, it is a little bit more of a tuned Phylon, a little bit more of an elastic and bouncy Phylon, and that ball just sprung right up from it. I also noticed with these, especially on an outdoor court, I could really get up and down, up and down, up and down really quick, really easily. For a shoe that has such a flat profile, it definitely plays like a shoe that's a little bit more meant for elite type jumping. And so speaking of, for bounce and shock absorption on the URS, gonna give them a 5 out of 5 for bounce, just because I don't know how Nike was able to make a shoe that performs like this with the profile it is. That deserves a 5 out of 5 just in of itself. But for shock absorption, a 3 out of 5. Remember, when the foam is this springy and lively, but this flat in the heel, it probably will start to bottom out pretty quick. Plus, because it's a flat profile, there's just not much to really catch your foot coming down, so it's kind of like coming down on a board. So just watch out for that. Now, getting into my least favorite part about the Ja 1 for sure is its outsole tread. Now, it is a very interesting tread pattern, and it is a full-length continuous tread pattern, which I do like. It is this more triangular, kind of polygonal type pattern, a little bit of herringbone here and there. But the thing is, for better or for worse, it is a super tightly packed, dense tread pattern. So on indoor courts, even after 30-45 minutes on court, and I was really trying to heat the rubber up, I still could not get these things to grip. If I put a ton of force on my forefoot, I could get them to grip going side to side. So if I was trying to hezzy step sideways, I could get them to kind of lay down some traction. But if I was trying to stop axially or front to back or in the y-axis, this thing was just shooting out from underneath of me. I was losing balance all over the place. And I think the biggest pitfall to the traction of the Ja 1, which I know is one of the features of it, but I kind of found it more of a bug for me, is that the midfoot and the heel is actually very narrow in the Ja 1. They cut it out to save weight and to encourage you to be up on the balls of your foot when using them, kind of like Ja Morant is. His footwork is just incredible. And so even though this does make them a lot more nimble and you can get them through the air a lot quicker and move the shoe around a lot easier, when you're in the air, you can twist and move easier because it's just less weight on your heel, just less drag in the air. However, I found unless you are pivoting incredibly hard, putting a ton of weight right under the ball of your foot, right in the big toe joint, these things just do not give traction on hardwood courts. On outdoor courts, it is a completely different story. The traction is phenomenal. I found this to be kind of an ideal traction for a semi-slick, all the way up to gritty outdoor asphalt court. The density of the traction kind of digs into that more gritty surface on there. You get a lot of surface area contact, especially because it's that full length tread pattern. And I didn't notice that cutout in the heel as much on an outdoor court. So I'd say it's very surface dependent on how these are going to play, and especially on how the speed is going to go on these. If you look at the speed on these, I think we got 2.8 on the speed ratio, which is nuts for a basketball shoe. That is a very high speed ratio. And yeah, they get off the blocks really quick on an outdoor court, but on an indoor court, you really can't get up to speed because number one, pushing off on them is really hard, and number two, slowing down is almost impossible. I actually was practicing some behind the back hezzies on the 3-point line, hit it off the rim, of course, bricked it, and then went into this group of pickleballers, and I went screeching onto the court trying to get them, and I slid like 4 or 5 feet trying to grab the ball before it hit one of those pickleball guys. So even though the rest of this shoe is made for incredibly nimble play on the ground as well as in the air, especially in the air, just gotta watch out for this tread to make sure that you're kind of getting the most out of it, maybe using a traction mat on these if you're gonna use them on indoor courts, or save them for your outdoor shoe. And so speaking of, for speed on the universal rating system, I'm gonna give them a 2 out of 5. On an outdoor court, I'd say they're like a 4, 4.5 out of 5. And on the Outsole durability test, the Dremel 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, and I got these all muddy. I was walking through grass and stuff to get to the court, and they still gripped great on the outdoor court. Shows you how good they are on outdoor courts. But about 1 millimeter of damage on a 2 millimeter tread depth. Durometer only came in like 14.7 around there. So these aren't the hardest rubber compound shoes, definitely not the longest lasting shoes out there. And so for durability on the universal rating system, I think the foam is gonna be the first thing that goes on these. So I'm gonna give them a 3 out of 5. And I think they get a 3 out of 5 because you can augment with an orthotic to make the foam last longer. Otherwise, it'd probably be taken down another point. But getting into the fit of the Ja 1, this is a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde situation here. A narrow foot, I think you can definitely just go true to size on these, even though they are very accommodating. I think just wear a wider sock in there or a bulkier padded sock. A medium foot can go true to size, but a medium foot and a 2E foot, at least for me, I went up a half size because I was really worried about that narrow heel and midfoot and I was looking at it online. And I am really glad like my foot doctor Spidey sense kicked in, because you do want the shoe just a little bit bigger, at least for me, if you're not an elite basketball player. If you're somebody with great footwork and super good stability, great footwork, great handles, I think you'll really enjoy the cutout in the midfoot and the heel, because like I said, in the air, you're able to do a lot more interesting things. The weight reduction of them is really nice. The weight being kind of centered in the forefoot of the shoe just allows a lot more creativity. But if you're not on that elite level, you might just want the shoe to be a little bit bigger, a little bit bulkier to give you a little bit more stability. These also expand very nicely, like I said, so I think no matter what kind of foot shape you are and size, I think you can find a pretty decent fit with these. The only thing I would caution you on, like I said, because these are so flat, almost board-like, in the forefoot, like I said, you do have the really thin zoom air unit. Now, if the ball of your foot lines up with that perfectly, you're gonna get a lot of forgiveness for ball of foot pain. However, I think for really any snake bitten type foot, I would be throwing an orthotic in these. For all that shock, I'll leave some orthotics in the description. I think would be a really good match for these. And so for comfort and support on the universal rating system, for comfort, I'm gonna give them a 4 out of 5. Support though, 3 out of 5. All right, but getting into playability, the Ja 1, why I think these complement Ja's game so well. Number one, I think he's probably playing with a softer rubber compound than they're putting in the shoe in their stock version. And if not, then his footwork is even more elite than I thought it was before. He's one of my personal favorite players. You know, I think with these, with the weight and all the bulk being centered around the distal midfoot and forefoot specifically, I will say these do allow you to rotate really easy on the ground as well as in the air. These allow you just to get that really quick pivoting because there's just not much in the back of the shoe to stop you from doing it. Like I said, those cutouts make this shoe a really incredible turning type shoe. I know that's really niche and really esoteric, but they really do move around very easily. And I noticed for me, I'm not an elite basketball player by any stretch of the imagination. And I even found for me, I was able to kind of twist and move a little easier in these. I just felt like in the heel, there was really like nothing back here almost. It was like almost just like a half of a shoe. Especially because the ankle collar being so compressive around the ankle, it did just feel like my foot was coming straight down. There was only a shoe from the midfoot on. So I would say, especially with Ja, who really can contort himself around people, and you would think there's no way he's gonna get to the rim or no way he's gonna create even just that little millimeter of space. He somehow finds a way to. And I think with these, they more reduce impediments to Ja's movement more than do anything for him. I think that's number one, why they put such a thin zoom area in there. He doesn't really need a bigger one. Remember, his are being made to measure. So that zoom unit is kind of contacting his foot perfectly if he is using that still kind of narrow zoom unit. So for him, I don't think it really matters. He's gonna be able to get that little bit of balance off of it no matter what. I would say for people that aren't Ja Morant, people that don't have his footwork, I'd say if you keep them on an outdoor court, you're gonna get all the benefits of this shoe, really none of its drawbacks. And if you are on indoor hardwood, rubberized, or carpet, I wouldn't put these on carpet, but if you are on an indoor surface, I really just would be watching out for that traction, because you might find yourself in a little bit of trouble getting off balance or just kind of not being able to set yourself right for a shot. But of course, love to know your thoughts on the Ja 1, especially at its price point. I think they're coming in at like, what, $110 once they actually go retail. Right now, they're crazy expensive, especially the Dior ones too. So I'd love to know if you're trying to pick a pair up. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to see another recent sibling to the Ja 1, the next gen going into the knife, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you in the next one.